When the aircraft that's this week's kit of the week, the ZERBE Air Sedan, made its first attempted flight in 1921, it rose briefly from the ground, hobbled along in the air briefly, and then much more quickly descended into the ground with a thud. Now, fortunately, the pilot walked away unharmed, but the aircraft was reduced in common parlance today to kit form, which is kind of ironic because I've got one in kit form that I'm going to put together to make a model of the ZERBE Air Sedan in 1/48 scale. It was made by Avis. Why don't you hang around and check it out right here on Gary's Stuff. Hi there, I'm Gary. Welcome to my channel. Welcome back if you've been here before. So today indeed is build day on the kit of the week, that kit being the ZERBE Air Sedan in 1/48 scale from Avis. Now, if you're thinking about buying one of these and just want to know what you get in the box, then there is already a box opening video available on my channel. There's also a context video available just in case the, let's say, interesting design of this aircraft has piqued your interest into what else might have had more than 3 wings and attempted to fly. If you have one of these in your stash and you want to know how to put it together, then this very much is the video for you. Now, if you like any of the content you see on my channel, please do remember, give it the imperial thumbs up on the like button below, because every like counts. And if you haven't done so yet, please do subscribe to the channel, hit that bell, and you'll be notified of all my future videos as they are uploaded. And of course, if you'd like to give a bit more concrete support, you can do that through super thanks by becoming a channel member or by using any of my online partner programs. And finally, this kit of the week was very kindly donated by Nick Johnson as one of his mystery boxes. So thank you very much, Nick. Right, let's get a move on then and put this kit of the ZERBE Air Sedan in 1/48 scale by Avis together. Okay then, let's make a start on this aircraft. Now we have the engine assembly here. On the back there's a bit with a tab. That's got to be back of the engine. There's a propeller shaft that goes through here. And then we've got 2 other things that go on. First is this. I'm going to say they're valve links, something like that. And then on top of that goes this other thing. I suspect it's either the air inlet or the exhaust. I don't know which. Anyway, that's what goes where. Let's start gluing things up. So first of all, the dab of glue in to get that prop shaft in place. Like that. Then what I think are the valve connecting rods. They go in. Now we're going to just dab these in place first. I'll leave this to set, then we'll put what I think are the inlet manifolds on top. Just make sure they're actually connected to the top of the cylinders like so. Okay, and then let that set for a little while. Okay, so we put this other disc on, and you can see that each of these pipes goes into the top and side of each cylinder. Okay, so that's how they line up. Okay, so we make a start with the interior by putting this, what I assume to be instrument panel, onto this bulkhead. Now I'm going to paint on this back. I'm going to see if I can find a couple of spare instrument decals somewhere to put on there. If not, I'll paint a couple in, just so it doesn't look too sparse. Anyway, that's essentially the front of the aircraft. That's what's right in front of the pilot's face. I know, it's bizarre, trust me. I mean, the engine's here, there, that's the engine mounting. We'll see later how it all works. So here is a little instrument panel. I just made it, this is just very rough painting because, you know, it's going to be inside a plane with windows. So just made it look a little bit like a wooden frontage. Instrument panel edged with a bit of brass, a few spots of brass here and there. I figured white for the airspeed indicator and the altimeter. A lot of instruments were white back in the day. An engine instrument for what good, maybe an oil pressure or something like that. Temperature one as well, a couple of those anyway, in black. This is all brush painted. It's really very rough, but as I say, inside, you know, considering the scale as well, you know, here's my finger. Considering the scale and the fact it's going to be inside a darkened cockpit with a few windows, I think it's more than adequate. And speaking of windows, we can start putting the windows in. Now these come as sort of strips really. I've already masked off the individual frames and sprayed everything with primer, and they just sort of sit, you can see here they sit in like a channel, a keyed channel, so just sit them in. Make sure this one on this side is level with the frame. That's a door, literally a door for them to go in, and the one on the other side is a single piece. And then just use a tiny dab of extra thin cement or something like that to put them in place. Right, now that I've put all the glass in place where it belongs, including in this front piece here, which doesn't fit very well, but it's good enough. This actually curves quite a lot. This is a flat piece of glass. I'm not going to get into warming up the polystyrene to make it fit. It'll just have to do. Here is I'm going to do the cabinet. So this is the base part. I think I'll just paint this black. Seats I might do as a sort of a reddish leathery colour. These I'll probably just do as wood, these seat supports, and then some sort of metal and wood and whatever for the front end here. Interestingly, these seat supports here are labelled B11 and B1. The front ones are B1, the back ones are B11. If we look on the sprues, on the frames, these, I'll zoom in a bit so we can get the full impact of this. These are 1, and these are 1, and 1, 1, 1, and 1, 1 on frame B. So I don't know what the game is. I think these ones here are slightly longer than these ones here, so I'll put those at the front and those at the back, and that'll give like a gentle sort of recline, an economy class recline to the seats when they go on. And indeed, now you can see I've taken them off the frame. One set is just that little bit smaller, shorter than the other set. So the longer set will go at the front, the shorter set will go at the back for each seat. There's a lot of flash to clean off as well. So I've put the seat supports in and painted them. What we need now, this front assembly here is for it supports the rudder bars and things like that. And there's two tiny little holes here and here, which are supposed to be where the crossbar sits later on to support the front part of the pilot's seat. But anyway, we'll put this in for the moment. So those two spots go towards the back, and then this kind of just sits in the front, like so. The rudder bar trough, as it were, the thing where the rudder bar goes, that hooks over the bottom of the two rails. You can see there's two rails, there's the top rail and the bottom rail. Hooks over the bottom rail here, to hold it in place. It also has the benefit of holding this rail in place nicely as well. Then the rudder pedals just sit on top here. I should say a lot of this internal structure is quite arbitrary because the thing was broken up. I don't think there were any plans or anything like that of this aircraft at all, other than a few photographs. So we're going to guess that the rudder, but it had a rudder, so it's going to have rudder pedals, I think is the basic assumption. There's also a hole in the front, bottom of the front of the pilot's seat post there for a control column. Like so. Let's just leave those alone now, because then eventually there's going to be another bar on top, then we can put the seats in. I'm going to fit this bar in across here. It's quite a tricky chap, this one. Okay, so that bar goes in there, and that now forms the support for the pilot's seat, if you see. Let's let that dry up first before we go any further. One thing that is rather annoying on a lot of the bigger parts, you can see here there's a sort of a track that the side panel fits into. And then there's an injection gate here that actually fits into it. So it's really difficult to get that off and clean it up and then take off the remains of it that sit in that channel. Same on the other side. It doesn't look much, but trust me, that little blob there will raise up that seam all the way along here and all the way along here. So you have to get rid of that. The only really way of very, very sharp edge bit of sanding or a craft knife, really carefully take that out. I'll try and do something. Really need to, I kind of like to lay the knife into the track a bit, slightly, and just very, very, very gently push. You'll find that quite often with craft knives, this inside bit here is really sharp because it never gets used. It's normally the top end here that gets used. And then just try and sort of just take it out really gently. Give that a bit of a sand. It's useful if you've got a sanding stick that's got an edge to the sand. So you can run it along like this as well. That will help. There we go. That's pretty clean. So that's grand now. Just do that on the other side. But it is a pain to have to do this, to be fair. And finally, for the interior, we can put the seats onto their supports. What I've done with these is I've given them a coat of like a cavalry brown to make it look sort of vaguely leatherish. And then I've just done a little bit of low lighting into the corner, down into the bottom there, and a bit of just a touch of highlighting on this rim. And then that's that. That's the passenger cabin complete. Okay, so now we can start putting some of the parts together of the fuselage. Now that this tail bit has got a little bit of a sort of triangular wedge, and that fits into here. So the top of the roof, it's like a box structure, the fuselage. I'll try it from this side. So it sits into that tail wedge like that, and then follows the rest of the structure around. It really does not like playing ball, this thing. There we go. So that sits up at that end. That sits into there at that end, and we'll try and glue it all together. And likewise, the floor sort of slips in to the slot at the bottom, but slips up to the end like so. Okay, so you've kind of got a bit of the box structure here, essentially. Okay, then the inside front wall can go on with the instruments, like so. Then this pilot sort of viewing window, I won't call it much more than that, sort of slides into place as well. It connects with the floor and then sits back. That's it. I will say now the fit of these pieces is marginal. It's pretty horrible, to be honest. But hey ho. Now, before we put the other half on, we've got to put the cabin floor in. And it kind of just sort of sits in here. I'm going to assume it sits on top of this. Okay, so let's get some tweezers and see what we can do here. So there's like a small kind of slot at the back here for this. It tells us where it goes like that. So that's actually pretty close. I'm going to take that. There you go. It fits in like that. That's all I'm saying. Yep. Remember, by the way, I've sprayed the interior of this the same colour as the exterior. Do remember to take the masks off on the inside, not on the outside, but once you've done the spraying on the inside, take the masks off because you ain't going to get them off otherwise. Okay, and then the big moment is, of course, putting the other half on, which could be either fantastic or it could be an absolute nightmare, and I'm not entirely sure which just yet. Let's see how we go. Okay, here we go. We'll start at the back and just lay the piece on top and then try to get things to stick where they're supposed to stick. It's another reason for taking the door off. It can lift apart fairly easily without doing any damage. Okay, look, I'm going to go around this and just tighten these up a bit and then start putting tape around the joints, but I think that's fairly close to where I want to be. So I'm just going to tape up some joints here, tape up some seams, and then I'm going to leave it alone for the rest of the day. The first part of the undercarriage is this A-frame that sits underneath the fuselage like so. Then the next bit of the undercarriage fits on the side here and just sort of sits on the leg basically. I mean, there's nothing here that says it fits in a particular way. So I guess it just sort of connects somehow with the leg at the front here. Right, we can see here on this forward bulkhead, rear firewall, whatever you like, of the engine area, there's an outside rim that's got a sticky up tab here, and that sort of locates where the engine sits and its orientation. Although it's a rotary, so I don't see what the issue is. But there's also a central pit here. Now this is supposed to be deep enough for the back end of the propeller axle that we put in earlier. I don't think it's anywhere near deep enough. So what I've done is I've just snipped off the back end of the prop axle because I glued the prop axle in the first place. So I don't really care whether the propeller spins or not. If you do care if the propeller spins, you might have to either deepen that or just keep sanding down the back end of the axle until it does fit in. Anyway, the engine slots in to that gap there like so, and then sits in place like so. Now you'll notice I've painted the engine already. What I've painted it with is burnt iron for the cylinders. I've used black for the push rods. I've used copper for the air induction pipes, and then just some aluminium on the center and on the tappets at the top, just to make it look nice and bright. Anyway, while I'm waiting for the engine to dry, what I'm going to put is this central sort of support structure for the wings set. That's going to need to dry so it's absolutely solid, and I will touch up the paint on it when it's done as well. Now there is a post that needs to go through here, but when you're gluing these sections together, it might just have sort of interfered with that hole. So just open it up a little bit again with a 1mm drill bit. Then you should be able to just feed the pole through. He says, optimistically. There we go. Even it up and glue it in place. Now the cowling goes over the engine, fits over the engine. I think the idea is to get it so it sort of connects with the front of the fuselage like that. There we go, like that. So we glue that into place, and then later on we'll paint it. Then we'll go around and paint all these other bits. So I've got a couple of posts that I've put on that support the wings. This thing we just did as well. Paint these up and get on to the next stage. Now, if you've taken the wings off of the frames to prep them and paint them and all this, you might be thinking, how do I know which wing is which? Well, if you look at the instructions, you'll see that the front wing here, the foremost wing, there's the outer rib here fits in further. So the further back you go, the further out that point is. To start this frankly crazy wing section, what I'm going to do is just put these inner supports onto the front wing first and let them set. Then what I suggest you do next is put in the tailmost of the wings and let that set as well. Then you can just put the other two wings in place. Sounds bizarre, doesn't it? The other two wings. But there we go. There we are. One of the more fiddly things you need to do is to put these bits of photo etch into the wheels and just put it over the middle first and make sure that's super glued in first, and then worry about the spokes going to where they're supposed to be. Now remember that rod we had to push through the back end of the fuselage, had to make the hole slightly bigger for it. Well, that connects to the very back end of the inner supports for the wings. Then along the fuselage there are other sort of supports that prod up onto the fuselage and locate it. Just glue those into place one by one. And now with the inner rails set, and start on the outer rails. I'm going to put them on the wings first and then try and connect them all up to the body. So I've taken the covers off the windows, I've put the decals on the sides, only one on each side. What I'm now going to do is put the sailplane in. That goes just here. And we will glue that on and let it set. We can put the wheels onto the axle as well. At this point, we will touch up any missing bits of paint in a moment. But we'll do this and then we'll let this set because we want this to be reasonably secure. Do we not? Okay, we're going to let that dry. The other thing we may as well do, whilst we've got it up here, is put the propeller on. That's what just goes on the front like so. So there we have the ZERBE Air Sedan, possibly the single most bonkers idea I've seen for an aviation project in a long, long time. A very, very odd kit to make. Your normal techniques, just give up on them and just do your best. But I think it definitely becomes a talking piece down your local club. And I'll be taking this to my local club when we meet up later in the month. It was fun to build. It's a challenge to build. Ultimately, I think it's a really cool little thing. Yeah, I enjoyed it. If you can find one, if you can get one, I would recommend it, but just be patient. There's a lot of fit to check out. There we go then. What an interesting plane. What a strange and occasionally difficult build. It's difficult when there's only a couple of photos to reference to build anything that, you have to make a lot of assumptions, and the designers have made some assumptions here in the kit. It's a low run kit. It's quite flashy at times, so it's obviously the molding in pressure is a bit too much for the molds they're using. But you know what? Ultimately, it's fine. I'd rather have something a bit flashy than undershot, so that's cool. And it went together eventually reasonably well. The instructions are not that helpful at times. The structure is really quite complex and a little frustrating. But at the end of the day, we have a reasonably lovely model of a very, very, very odd aeroplane that will certainly be a talking point down at most clubs of an evening. If you've enjoyed the show, I hope you have, but if you have, please do remember, give it an imperial thumbs up, please, on the like button below, because every like counts. And if you haven't done so yet, please do remember, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell, and you'll be notified of all my future content as it appears on the channel. Thank you so very much for watching, and I hope to see you again very soon. Take care now, and goodbye.